During John's senior year of high school, he ended up dropping out and decided to move to Las Vegas, which, this is a side note. Why do people drop out senior year? Like, you only have one more year to go and then you're done. And then you're done. You are done. But then when people drop out, why? Just finish and then you're done. Anytime you need life advice, you're welcome. Anyway, so he drops out of school and he goes to Las Vegas. When he gets to Las Vegas, he ends up working for a funeral parlor. Now, this is like already in itself very strange because he gets hired at this funeral parlor and they find out that like John doesn't have anywhere to stay. He like moved out there and he's not settled, right? So the owner of this parlor was like, you can live here in the funeral parlor. And they set up a cot for him behind the embalming room, which is like, okay, I don't know. Okay. It's a choice. Creepy place to live full time, but John, I think he was happy just to have a place. Who knows? But John just seemed to like it because when he would sleep there in the cot, he'd be in the room, the place alone, right? So at night, he would climb into one of the coffins or some of the coffins and cuddle up with the body of someone that was in the coffin. So there was one time that it was a teenage boy who had passed and was like in the coffin. So he gets up and he gets in there with them and cuddles. Yeah, so that happened. John was quote unquote pretty normal. He was an active member in the community. He was outgoing. People seemed to really like him. Like, you would never know that something was off, but I think at this point it was the first sign that something was different with him. Yeah. And even John in later interviews said like it was at this moment that he kind of it like a light bulb went off on his head and he was like, okay, what I'm doing is wrong. Like, I'm in here petting a dead body. And then he kind of went into like a state of shock is what he said. It was like a wake-up call in a way, an awakening, but not like an awakening to where he's like, I'm going to be better. It seemed like it was a dark awakening. He wakes up, he decides, you know what? This Las Vegas thing isn't for me. And he calls up his mom and he's like, Mom, can I come back home? Will Dad let me come back home? And she's like, yeah, you can come back home. He forgives you for dropping out of school, moving to Las Vegas, but it's fine. Just come home. After being in Vegas for only 3 months, John moves back home to Chicago with his parents. So when John moves back home, he then attends business college, and then he ends up graduating in 1963. And then John gets a job working at a shoe company that asked him to relocate to Springfield, Illinois, where he then is working as a salesman. So once again, when John moved, this is when he decided to get active in the community again, but this time in Springfield. So he joined a local nonprofit leadership training organization that focuses on business development, management skills, and also community service. And it's called the JC organization. And John must have really loved working with them because he busted his ass and he spent a lot of time with them. After spending so much time with them, he ends up becoming the vice president of the organization in 1965, and he was named the 3rd most outstanding JC in the state of Illinois. He's number 3. He's number 3. Wow. During this time is when he meets a coworker named Marilyn Myers, and they start dating. And then after dating for a little bit of time, they get engaged. Ooh. So 6 months after they were engaged, they got married. But during that time, Johnny Boy was not exactly faithful to Miss Marilyn. He tells Marilyn that one night, or somehow she finds out, but one night he gets really drunk and then he gets a blowy from one of the fellow JC members. Babe, I didn't even touch her. She touched me with her mouth. I didn't cheat. She did it. But she ends up working through it with him, and John and Marilyn proceed to still get married. So we're not judging because, we're judging, kind of, but not really. So the two of them get married, and John's new father-in-law, he happened to purchase 3 different KFC restaurants in Waterloo, Iowa. KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, you know, hell yeah. So he purchases 3 of those and he goes to John and he's like, hey, like, would you like to be a manager of my 3 restaurants? I need a manager. And John is like, hell yeah, like this is a very great opportunity. Very secure job, great money. So Marilyn and John, they pick up and they move to Waterloo. John would later describe his time in Waterloo as being perfect because it was just a great job, a perfect marriage, according to him. Marilyn gave birth to their son in February of 1966, and then their daughter in March of the following year. And John was just working his butt off at these KFC restaurants, and he was also active at the local JC chapter. And again, it wasn't long before he became vice president of the Waterloo JCs. The people at the JC meetings, they like loved John because he would bring in Kentucky Fried Chicken to all the meetings, and he insisted everybody call him the Colonel. I don't know. I guess he just liked when people liked him. Anyway, so top it all off, when his parents came to visit him in 1966, his father was actually proud of him. And he pulls John aside and like apologizes to him for all the physical and emotional abuse he inflicted on him when John was younger. And John Sr. even went so far as to telling John, like, I was wrong about you. And then he shook his hand. And like that to John was a groundbreaking moment. His dad was proud of him. I mean, he finally got his father's approval, something he could never get. And yeah, it just had a very big effect on him. But not everything during these perfect years were indeed perfect. Of course not. John and the other members of the Waterloo JC were heavily involved with drugs, porn, picking up sex workers, and wife swapping. It seemed like a bit of a party organization, which that's fine, I guess. But wife swapping, not the show. Like kind of like it's like a swingers party, it seems like. And that's not all. Like John had opened up a quote unquote club in the basement of his house where all of the employees, or a lot of the employees from his KFC restaurants, would come over, kick it, drink, play pool, and they would do this until like into the late of the night. A lot of the employees like loved him because he's this cool manager who lets them come over and just party all night and hang out and drink. And they're like, hey, this is cool. So from the looks of it, this whole like downstairs party club thing, it seemed all fun, like a manager who's taking care of his employees. But really it was just a way for John to indulge himself, because both boys and girls would come over and hang at this little club, but John would spend most of his time hanging out with the younger boys, the teenage boys that were working at the KFCs, and then he would give these teenagers like a bunch of alcohol. And of course, like, not of course, but you know, when you're a teenager and like an adult gives you alcohol and you're hanging out and with friends, like you're probably gonna drink it and you're probably gonna be like, well, this is so cool. Then after kind of gaining their trust and giving them alcohol and being the cool manager, then John would make sexual advances once he got the kids sauced up a little bit. If the guy or the teenager or the boy was like, hold on, like, I'm not into that, John would laugh it off and just say like, I'm just joking, LOL, just testing your morals, you know, just LOL, that's all.